What is the next big event from Marvel? It just happens to be Legacy, so let's talk about the 15 most important books that are coming out in Marvel Legacy. To start off with, we're going to talk about Marvel Legacy number 1. So this is written by Jason Aaron, and this book is going to be a 50-page oversized issue that's going to deal with not only things like Avengers 1 million BC, but it's also going to deal with a lot of other stories that are going around the Marvel Universe. Based on the interviews and the other pieces of information coming out around Marvel Legacy, what we see is that this is going to be really a jumping off point. It's designed to provide a little bit of structure and framework for the rest of Marvel's legacy. It's not necessarily going to be one consistent story that's going to be going on through the entire universe, quite like DC Rebirth, but it's going to give some kind of backbone to various things, and it's going to be the introduction to a story that Jason Aaron wants to tell. He's also recently revealed that the 1 million BC Avengers is a group of heroes that we're going to be seeing again, so that kind of shines a little bit of light onto another most important book that we're going to be talking about a little bit later on in the video. Next, if we're talking about important videos, we're going to be talking about Amazing Spider-Man 789. So this is the post-Parker Industries Peter Parker. So not only is he going to not have the technology as well as the billions of dollars at his disposal, which is one of the things that a lot of characters didn't really like about the most recent run of Amazing Spider-Man, but he is going to be going back to the Daily Bugle. He's going to be considered a menace among the streets, and possibly his own social ego, Peter Parker, is going to be a menace as well based on the events of the entire Parker Industries Secret Empire kind of tie-in. But Dan Slott's insinuated that this book isn't necessarily going to be just Peter going back to being a photographer. He's going to go back to the Daily Bugle in a completely different context, which a lot of people are assuming is that he would be editor-in-chief. And there is the rumor of a brand new creative team that's going to be coming on to the book a little bit later on. I'm not necessarily sure if that's true because I feel like Dan Slott wouldn't let Amazing Spider-Man slip from his grasp unless it was like through his cold, dead hands. But it could be a pretty fresh change. So Amazing Spider-Man is definitely a book that you're going to have to watch at this point in time because it's going to determine pretty much the trajectory of the entire character moving forward for the next 12 to 16 months. Next, if we're going to talk about important books inside Marvel Legacy, we're going to talk about Invincible Iron Man number 593, which is the beginning of the Return of Tony Stark arc. So this is something where we see Riri Williams' Ironheart meeting up with Doctor Doom and trying to find what happened to Tony Stark and if there's a possible way to return him. Now, we all know that Tony Stark's body is currently on ice, and it feels like he hasn't really left since he's been in an AI presence ever since the beginning of the new Invincible Iron Man series. And that is kind of... It feels wrong to me because first off, I didn't really like the way that Riri Williams' introduction was handled. I didn't feel like they gave her enough promise. I felt like the use of the Tony Stark AI was a little bit poor. You know, there was a lot of different flaws that came into that introduction, and she has so much potential as a possible character. Overall, it's very enjoyable to read her book. However, this is a situation where I'm not sure if they're going to try and shoehorn 3 different Iron People into a book for a short period of time, because Infamous Iron Man has been fantastic, but it is finishing after issue number 12, and Riri Williams hasn't really had her chance to shine in many places, which is really unfortunate. So to bring back Tony Stark, it'd really be catering to a lot of longtime fans, but it doesn't really give a lot of creative potential outside of this story arc. So I'm not necessarily sure what Brian Michael Bendis is intending to do, but I don't necessarily have high hopes for it. That doesn't mean that it isn't one of the most important books coming out of Marvel Legacy. The make-or-break nature of Invincible Iron Man, starting with number 593, cannot be denied. Now that we're done talking about a man coming back from the dead, we're going to talk about the death of the Mighty Thor, which starts off in Mighty Thor number 700. So this is going to show what's possibly the final arc for Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor. And with a run that's been continuing on for several years now, and Jason Aaron's really excellent time, starting way back from like the God Butcher arc and before then, when, you know, we've got Original Sin and the introduction of Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor, this is going to seem to be a culmination. And I'm really interested to see what happens not only with the character, how she progresses, how she really... I don't know necessarily, she could ascend to something beyond. We've seen sillier things happen when it comes to people with powers that show importance inside the Marvel Universe. But the key is that there's going to be a very serious change of the guard when it comes to Thor and possibly the creative team and the entire direction of the character moving forward. So the Mighty Thor number 700 and the Death of Mighty Thor arc becomes a must-read for a lot of individual people, especially fans of Thor. You know, this is for people that might want to see the return of Thor Odinson to being the wielder of Mjolnir, or just looking for more continuations of Jane Foster's storyline as Thor. Either way, Jason Aaron is not going to disappoint, and we do see the return of Russell Dodderman onto the book, which is always a welcome. After Thor brings down the thunder, we're going to journey off into the jungle and we're going to talk about Punisher the Platoon #1. So Punisher the Platoon is a short mini-series that's written by Garth Ennis, and this is really going to delve into the origin story of the Punisher before he was the Punisher. So when Frank was in Vietnam and really being a soldier and those kind of things. And that is going to be very interesting because, first off, Garth Ennis does a fantastic job when it comes to this kind of gritty realism, when it comes to very soldier or like military-specific stuff. He does a really good job with those things, so it's going to be a very interesting story, and it provides a little bit more depth. You know, Frank Castle's Punisher doesn't need a whole lot of depth. You know, it's just like, you're bad, I'm going to kill you. That's a very simple motif and a very simple motive as far as that's concerned, but providing a little bit more of insight into how his mentality came about to be that way is always going to be something that I'm going to grab some interest in. So it's definitely a book that I consider one of the most important in Marvel Legacy coming out. And then from one potential patriot to another, we're going to talk about Captain America 695. And the reason that this book is important, not only is it because this is the first real Steve Rogers book in the aftermath of Secret Empire and trying to earn back the trust of the American people or the world at large, as well as the fellow members of his superhero community, it also shows a brand new team of Mark Waid and Chris Samney going in to take hold of this character. And I'm really intrigued to see what Captain America, when he's not necessarily revered as a pillar of truth, justice, and the American way, bringing home that very pillar of good and righteousness and always making the correct decision. There's an element of distrust into those kind of things, what it really does to the man and what it really does to how the stories interact with each other. So even though Secret Empire might not be the favorite event of a lot of Marvel fans, it still provided a lot of potential that Chris Samney can really kind of illustrate and that Mark Waid can really sink his teeth into. This also kind of indicates there might be a change of the guard on one of Mark Waid's current titles that he's writing, and that's also pretty interesting, but we're going to talk about that a little bit later. Next, we're going to talk about Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows #13, which also, like Captain America 695, has a change in creative team. So Ryan Stegman's off the book, Jerry Conaway hasn't been writing it for quite some time, and what we get is Jody Houser taking over after a time jump inside this alternate universe where we have a married Mary Jane and Peter Parker with their lovely daughter. So this is going to be a young teenage version of their daughter and how everything kind of interacts. She's got a brand new costume, she's got a brand new style, and it's going to be interesting to see how Jody Houser really handles this. I'm not necessarily sure where the direction's going. I know that it's got potential. Jody Houser has a lot of capabilities when it comes to writing different characters. She's done a great job on Faith. She did a really good job on Mother Panic. And I'm really intrigued to see how she handles this situation, whether it's going to be a good balance between the antics of Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and their daughter, or if it's going to kind of delve into a little bit more teen-centric focus. The growing up of this character and how she's kind of evolved over time to become who she is now, and maybe her fight for independence out of the shadow of some superstar parents. I don't know, but it brings some interesting possibilities into the mix. I kind of wish that it developed a little bit more organically, maybe a little bit longer time with the younger character, but it's definitely one of the most important books because Amazing Spider-Man Renew Your Vows has been a bright light in the Spider-Man mythos as far as the recent comic books are concerned, so I want to see it transition into good hands. After that, it's going to be Daredevil #595. So this is the beginning of the Mayor Fisk arc. So after Wilson Fisk's real attempt to let's say, rebrand himself. Instead of being the kingpin of crime, he was out there helping people, providing support through the excellent Matthew Rosenberg Kingpin title during the Running with the Devil crossover. It really showcased his efforts to kind of brand himself as a betterer of New York City and the very surrounding areas. So also, when we tie into Secret Empire, he gained a lot of trust by supporting people and providing what they needed during one of the most devastating times in recent history for New Yorkers in Manhattan. So it doesn't cause any kind of concerns that he would be elected mayor in this brand new rebuilt city when he's been doing everything that he can for it in that meantime. So it seems very natural, but having Wilson Fisk as the mayor of New York, it puts Daredevil in a pretty tough spot. So that's what's got me most intrigued. I'm really interested to see how Charles Soule really kind of plays with this dynamic and where everything goes from there. That's probably the thing that's got me most interested in Daredevil. I know there's been some really good runs recently that I've got to go back and check out, but if I'm going to be jumping onto a book at any point in time, especially a Daredevil book, this is it. But after Daredevil, we're back on the pain train with The Punisher #218. So this is a Matthew Rosenberg book, which is going to be dealing with Frank Castle in modern day, and he gets the War Machine armor. And just for that, it looks like we're going to be kicking a lot of ass. So I can't complain about Matthew Rosenberg, who writes really great villain stories, very good criminal stories. He did a great job on Civil War II Kingpin. He did a great job on Kingpin. He did a great job on Four Kids Walk Into a Bank. And if you're looking for a little bit more lighthearted fare, you can check out Secret Warriors, which is still very good, but it's got a touch of adult flair to it, which is pretty interesting. Overall, he's probably one of my favorite up-and-coming writers because he seems to take these books that don't necessarily... that they seem to have the odds stacked against them and turn them into something that's really special, you know, like Diamond in the Rough kind of style. So The Punisher has me really excited for where this is going to be going. Even though there's been a really great run on it recently, it's just taking it in a slightly different direction, and then seeing this man that's searching for redemption coming out of Secret Empire, because he was kind of betrayed by Steve Rogers, or at least who he thought was Steve Rogers, and is looking to get back on track. So definitely check out Punisher number 218. Definitely one of the most important books coming out of Marvel Legacy, simply because of what's happened to Frank Castle as a character. Next, we're going to take our medicine and talk about The Good Doctor and Doctor Strange number 381, which showcases a brand new creative team in the form of Donny Cates and Gabriel H. Walta. So you'll remember Gabriel H. Walta from the Vision series that was with Tom King, providing that spectacular art style. And we have Donny Cates, who did a great run on a very short series called God Country, as well as numerous other books, but that's what I remember him from the most. And the biggest thing about this is that we start off with a brand new Sorcerer Supreme in the face of Loki. So seeing where Doctor Strange is going to go out of this, I was really enjoying Jason Aaron's run, and there's been some kind of stopgaps in there. This is where we're going to be picking up with a creative team that's going to be sticking around for quite some time. I can't wait to see what G.H. Walta does with the magic of Doctor Strange, and what Donny Cates can really do, because he wrote a very sophisticated and introspective story about a man with Alzheimer's that's kind of lost himself, and has slowly got these lucid kind of pieces that are coming back to him, and only with the power of this giant god sword was he able to redeem himself and, you know, reclaim who he was as a man, and the lengths that he would go in order to carry that through and to maintain that. So I'm really excited to see what he does with Doctor Strange, since it can kind of explore a lot of more of that mythical, magical realms of the multiverse kind of situation. Lots of dimensions for Doctor Strange to travel through. So it's definitely a book that you're going to have to pick up, and one of the most important in Marvel Legacy. Sticking with Donny Cates, we're going to talk about Thanos number 13, and this is just really because I love the creative team. The name of the arc that's coming out of Marvel Legacy is going to be Thanos Wins, and this new creative team that's taking over from Jeff Lemire, who just is going to finish up his arc in a few small issues. Like issue number 12 is coming out in a week or two, so that's going to be the really big deal. But Thanos number 13 is going to be the kickoff of this brand new character arc, and it's going to be about Thanos Wins, and, you know, what happens when the Mad Titan succeeds in controlling and destroying the universe, or whatever really happens, whatever his goal is inside that big purple melon on top of his body. So I just really like the creative team. I think it's going to be a really great take on Thanos, and that's why I call it one of the most important books coming out of Marvel Legacy. The success of small books like this is what's going to really be key to Marvel Legacy going forward, if it's really kind of be considered a great movement for Marvel. Having small books build a fan base because of great stories and great creators is where they're going to get the next generation of great content. To finish things off, we're going to talk about resurrections inside the Marvel Universe, and first it's going to be about titles, because we have Marvel 2-for-1, which is going to be launching a number 1 issue, which is really like number 101 or number 102 or something like that, but we'll just call it number 1. So Chip Zdarsky and Jim Cheung are going to bring back Marvel 2-for-1, and it's going to be starring the Human Torch and the Thing. So 2 out of the Fantastic Four are going to be partnering up, and they're going to be confronting Doctor Doom in the first issue to get a secret, because if we remember correctly, infamous Iron Man insinuated and really basically told us that Doctor Doom remembers everything about being God in Secret Wars. And with that kind of information on hand, he has the potential knowledge to see where Reed Richards, Sue Storm, and, you know, Valeria and Franklin and those characters are inside the Marvel Universe, since their last known sighting was building the Marvel Multiverse, or at least building the Marvel Universe as we see it now. So the hunt for the Fantastic Four could be a really great arc, and this is the story that has the most potential to bring those characters back into the fold inside Marvel. So it's definitely a book that you're going to have to pick up. I've been really happy with Chip Zdarsky on Peter Parker's Spectacular Spider-Man, and Jim Cheung does a great job on art anyway, so it's easily one of the most important books that's coming out of Marvel Legacy, because not only are they resurrecting a book that was from the past, but they're also thinking about resurrecting one of the most important families inside the Marvel Universe, so it's definitely a must-read. Next, we're going to talk about Tales of Suspense number 100, which is another Matthew Rosenberg book because I'm a real fan of Matthew Rosenberg. But this tells a 5-part story, at least to start with, of Hawkeye and Winter Soldier on the hunt for the story behind what happened to Black Widow. So whether she's out there now doing these killings associated with Hydra high commanders or people that have kind of turned traitor on their people to support Hydra during the Secret Empire debacle. And it's really kind of an anti-buddy comedy or an anti-buddy book as far as what the writers are concerned and what Marvel's concerned. But it's another resurrection of a previously long since suspended title, and we're going to see how that can kind of provide a lot of support. And I really like the idea of Tales of Suspense and Marvel 2-for-1 simply because they offer the opportunity to tell shorter stories for individual characters and creators. So you can provide a lot of unique content, and it's a really great vehicle if they wanted to, say, lure in a lot more independent comic book creators to get them to create for the characters that they already own the IPs for, or to introduce new characters. It's a great testing ground, and if somebody does a really killer one-off story inside of Marvel 2-for-1 or inside of Tales for Suspense, this is a really great opportunity to create a much bigger, much better appreciated book. So those are two that are going to go right on my pull list. The last resurrection we're going to talk about is Resurrection Jean Grey, another Matthew Rosenberg book, which is going to be coming out, and that shows the return of a Marvel icon in terms of Phoenix and Jean Grey. And this is not necessarily the little girl that's back from the past to the future. This is about full-fledged Jean Grey Phoenix. So they've been teasing this kind of thing, and we all assume that this is the character now, so it's definitely something that you're going to have to watch out for. But it kind of gives me a very different flavor, because this feels like they're pulling a little bit of straws as far as this is concerned. They're not necessarily resurrecting, they're resurrecting a relatively obvious character, but the development of it is really important. If this is a key point in the storyline of Marvel Legacy, it really needs to be handled well. So I feel like they put a lot of confidence into Matthew Rosenberg in order to do this, so I'm really excited to see where it goes, but I completely understand that it may not be exactly what Marvel's looking for. To finish things off, we're going to talk about Avengers 675, and I can't scrounge up any kind of cover for it because it's pretty much classified at this point in time, but the big rumor about 675 is that it's going to show the brand new creative team that's going to be taking over for the book. So if that's true, that means that Mark Waid is currently off the book, and then the rumor is that Jason Aaron and Asad Ribic are taking over for Avengers, so that way they can possibly continue along with the storyline that they had in 1 million BC and develop a new lineup of Avengers characters, a brand new Avengers team. So if you're taking Jason Aaron off a book like Doctor Strange and giving him the opportunity to do Avengers, count me in. It's easily going to be one of the most must-buy books that I could have in my lineup because Jason Aaron is an extremely good writer. Asad Ribic does a fantastic job with the art, and I can't wait to see what he does with a group of characters and where he can kind of pick up from. Because if Chip Zdarsky is going to deal with the Fantastic Four inside Marvel 2-for-1, can Jason Aaron pick up the pieces of Secret Wars and kind of put us back into a correct and right Marvel universe? What does he have for stories to tell amongst these great characters? That is the thing that I want to see. I want to take a really great creator, pair him up with great characters, and see what kind of stories he can spin. That is the most important thing about Marvel Legacy, and that's why Avengers 675, if the rumors prove to be true, is one of the most important books in Marvel Legacy. But those are my thoughts. So those are 15 books that are about Marvel Legacy and the ones that I feel are going to be most important. There's a lot of new books that are being released, and it's nothing meant to belittle them. However, these are the ones that I feel are key to the success of Marvel. So I want to know what you guys think too, so hit me up in the comments down below so we can have that conversation. If you have any kind of questions about that, hit me up down there too. Of course, if you like what you see, hit the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to get more news, reviews, and commentary on comic books, comic book movies, comic book TV shows and games, and anything and everything having to do with the world of comics.